Oh my gosh. Just watching all that action makes me want to take a nap. I'm tired just from watching all that insane fighting that happened this episode. Whew. Alright. Well, my name is Becky. These are Inglorious Reviews, and tonight we're looking at Arrow 314, The Return. It was a good episode. It was. Lots of action. Thea finally found out the truth. Finally. And, but it was kind of a weird episode, too. It mostly took place in flashbacks. So, yeah, it was weird. Well, let's talk about the big plot line first. Thea finally knows about Malcolm. Woo! You know, they dragged that plot line out way, way too long. They really did. It was just as much as they shouldn't have dragged out the Laurel and Captain Detective Treasurer Lance plotline out for so long. It really went on. I started to wonder if it was going to be like an end of the season plot twister because they were just dragging it out so long. I was actually surprised that they did it tonight. I guess they needed to because they're, setting up for the big end of the season, plot. But still, yeah. And I'm really glad she knows. The highlight of the episode was Thea finally putting Malcolm in his place and being like, I am no longer your daughter. Take that. That was like him finally putting him in his place was like the best thing because Malcolm, and it's something that's been a problem this whole season that I have not understood, is how Malcolm has been able to BS everyone from like Oliver and the rest of the Arrow team and just everyone and be like, well, I killed 503 people, but I care about Thea because she's my daughter, so you should let me live and protect me from the League of Assassins and risk your own lives doing so to help to keep my genocidal self safe. But when Malcolm looks her in the eye and she's like, why did you drug me and make me kill a friend? And he's like, I did it because I'm your father and I care about you. And I was like, what? That was the dumbest line like he could have possibly used. I mean, there is no excuse, really. There is no excuse that could possibly justify what he did to her, so I guess he really just had to grasp at his, favorite excuse for why everyone should let him get away with this crappy things he does. But when she was like, Bia, that is some bull. I'll work with you and be your partner and whatever, because, my brother says we need to, but I am no longer your daughter. Oh my gosh. The look on Malcolm's face when he turns around. And when she first confronts him and the first thing he says like, Oliver was not supposed to tell you that. Like it's all Oliver's fault for telling her that he did that. Oh my god. Everything about that scene was like both wonderful and hilarious. And the look on his face when he turns around and looks at Oliver, just like the murder death glare, I'm gonna put some arrows in you for that look on his face. Oh my gosh, it was so funny, but it was great. So I'm really, really glad that plot line it's not over. We're gonna deal with the repercussions, but the secret is out. Secrets were a big theme this episode. They really were. Mostly about like what the secrets Oliver keeps, and how they affect his life. He still has a ton of secrets. We still don't know everything that happened. That happened in the 5 years he went away. We're probably heading towards the Russian Bratva plot line, which if I had to guess, he's never told anyone, not even Felicity, that at one point he came back to Starling City and, snuck a peek at everyone and what they were doing. Oh, I was so upset, by the way, that we did not get to meet Moira. I was really hoping they would have brought Moira's actress back just for a little cameo, because there were a whole lot of old cameos, of course, so we'll get to that in a minute. But, but it was, he has never told anyone about that. He's never told anyone the full truth about Shadow and everything that happened on the island. Oliver is ruled by a huge fear of losing people in his life. He's very brave about, he can face down Slade. He can easily, he has no problem saying to Slade, leave me here to starve to death, but let my sister go, because he is ruled by his fear of losing the people he loves. He clutches onto it, and, and he keeps secrets because I think he is just terrified of losing Thea, of losing Felicity and Diggle and the little, Arrow family that he's crafted for himself out of his mess of a life. And I think, like, those are the few, and the people he loves keep him grounded. Like, the people he loves keep him from becoming the mess, becoming Arrow completely, and giving him, like he says, I cannot be Oliver Queen. I have to be the Arrow all the time, which is why he won't get involved with Felicity. But I think there's a part of him that's terrified of completely becoming the Arrow and losing all those people that he loves out of his life and having no ties to, humanity and the world around him, and just, spending all of his time stuck in the shadows. So I think his secrets are his way of trying to hold on to that, onto his people. I think, he was terrified of, Thea going down a dark path if she found out the truth about what he did, or, going, not being able to recover from what she did and losing her. And, the same way, even, despite the fact that Slade was completely willing to kill both of them to get off the island. And, all the other stuff he did, last season, he still, does not want, he lets his fear of losing Thea, warn her against becoming a killer, because well, obviously for her own sake, he doesn't want her to become a killer, but, there's a fear of losing her down a dark path, and that's what's, and the fact that Slade understands that, Malcolm and Slade are, two both very interesting villains. Malcolm is a wonderful manipulator at people. He can understand people's emotional vulnerabilities and figure out what they want and use those to manipulate people. And Slade can too, to a point, but he has that knowledge, about using people's emotional vulnerabilities, but he has an understanding of Oliver that Malcolm does not. Malcolm, he understands Oliver we've both been as, killers and assassins and soldiers, whatever else. We both have this darkness. And, he understands him we both, know and love the same people and have kind of lived the same privileged life. And he understands from that point. But the time that Slade spent with Oliver on the island and everything, they went through the last few years, he has an innate understanding of Oliver personally. He knows Oliver's personalities and fears in a very deep way that just Malcolm cannot. And so he, when he says at the end of the episode, so you're losing her, there's a darkness that, Malcolm put in her that she's, that's made her just completely lost. And you've already lost your mom and your dad, and, what about that girl in the glasses? You lost her yet too? How many people are you going to lose before you lose Oliver Queen too? And it's that is just the heart of Oliver's fears and, his hopes and the things he wants is wanting to be Oliver, wanting to do good, wanting to be there, but also wanting to be Oliver Queen and still have all the people he loves too. And finding the balance between those two is his biggest struggle. And so the idea of losing all the people he loved and therefore losing himself is the heart of Oliver's fears. And Slade just, he goes for the, he just goes for the, the gut with that. He just really hits hard, hits the Achilles heel. He just really goes for the, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. He just really goes straight for the heart with that one. And that's why Slade is really such an interesting character, and why him and Oliver's, cat and mouse game last season was what made season 2 so great. Man, it was great to have Slade. You can just tell, you can really tell that Manu Bennett, I believe his name, I could be pronouncing that wrong. You can just tell, that's Slade's actor, you can just tell that guy is having a blast. You can just tell that he loves to play Slade. Oh man, yeah, so I hope they bring him back. You could just tell the actor is having a blast playing that character, as much as you can tell that John Barrowman has a blast playing Malcolm. So, yeah, it was fun to have Slade back, and, you could just tell he was relishing every minute. And he plays Slade as, such a, he's you know, a real serious threat, but he's also freaking hilarious. You know, and just how what an over the top like psycho villain he is, and you know, so complex, and oh my gosh, it was great to have him back. It really was. I mean, the episode was a very enjoyable episode, mostly because of him. Not that like it was really bad otherwise or anything. It wasn't. But yeah, really, yeah. So Slade was back. Weird, like low stakes. Like, you know how I said that not much, a lot happened, but not much happened. Slade got out of jail, he got back in. You know, there were fights, but I hope we see Slade again at some point. But yeah, it was kind of weird that to see him like brought back and then put back in his little box for, you know, just one particular standout episode. He may break up by the end of the season. Who knows? Yeah. So moving on. Flashbacks. This was a very flashback heavy episode. Probably the most flashback heavy episode I've ever seen, and it was really, really good. It was interesting to see. It was fun to see everyone. You know, but where they were, like, you know, a few years into the you know, Oliver's death, you know, post shipwreck, pre return of Oliver Queen. So Laurel is trying to take it. It was weird, like, you know, everyone set up these. They were all set up with these tiny little subplots too, and it was weird to see all these tiny little subplots going on in the flashback. It was like there was an episode going on inside the episode, so it was interesting. Yeah. So Laurel is about to take on a nice cushy corporate job in San Francisco, which very alcoholic Detective Lance, or Officer Lance, I don't know, Officer, Detective, Captain, Treasurer Lance. Yeah, and he's also, you know, an alcoholic at this point. He's not thrilled about it. Yeah, I have an Olaf Linkett be jealous. So he is not too happy about that, and, you know, he's drinking a lot, and in hindsight, I bet Detective Lance really wishes that she had taken that cushy job, because she would have never got involved with the Arrow stuff otherwise, and she'd be much safer in San Francisco than she would in Starling City. But so we got to see a pre-AA Detective Lance, you know, being a jerk to absolutely everyone. We got to see the start of Tommy and Laura's relationship, at least at one point. Oh my gosh, it was so great to see Tommy back. When I didn't like the series very much back in season 1, I still really liked Tommy because I thought that he was the most well-developed character on the show, and I was so mad when they killed him off. I did not watch season 2 for a while because of that. I was so upset. Colin Donnell is really good. You know, he's really great. I think he's been on Broadway. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that he played Enjolras in I may not be pronouncing that right either. He played that in the 25th anniversary concert of Les Mis that Nick Jonas was in. Yeah, so Google that. I'm pretty sure it's the same guy, and I'm pretty sure I've seen him in other stuff on Broadway videos. So, you know, get on YouTube if you're a fan of his and you're curious. But oh man, it was great to see him. So oh, this show and their awful wigs. It was not. I don't think Colin Donnell was wearing one, but like Oliver's hair was just awful in this episode, and Thea's hair was really weird. She's supposed to be like 14 at that time. But oh my gosh, the longer hair did make her look younger, but still, it was weird seeing her dressed up in. In season 1 too, like her outfits did not look like a schoolgirl. They looked like knockoff Gossip Girl, but not even as nice as the Gossip Girl costumes. Like nondescript white shirt, nondescript like black miniskirt, and wearing like these thigh-high boots, and like her tie was all messed up. There were no school insignias everywhere. Oh my gosh, it was really, really. It was. And in season 1, it was the same way when back when Thea was like a senior in high school in season 1, they did not do a very good job of making, convincing looking school, prep school uniforms for her and, the girl she'd run around with in season 1, and it's the same way here. Yeah, so it was great to see him. in Wigless again, and when see him at the start of him, and it was weird. Like, okay, I guess in season 1, Tommy and Laurel, they were not together, but they were dancing around each other. So maybe they'd been dancing around each other for a long time before Oliver showed up. But I feel like in season 1, they still hadn't gone together at that point. So, you know, they hadn't dated. So, I don't know, maybe they'd, like, tried on and off throughout the years and never really took it seriously before season 1. I don't know. Yeah, but we got to see Thea, you know, back in the full you know, throes of her substance abuse problem. And, well, you know, it's funny. Thea, you know, they talk about Laurel being an addict, having to go to AA and all this stuff, but Thea, like, you know, she drank a lot. She did a lot of different drugs with her friends from, like, the time, she was, like, 12, I guess, when she lost her parents, so, like, not too long after, she started doing drugs. So she was doing drugs from a pretty young age, and then, like, after the vertigo thing, like, she just stopped. Like, that's not how addiction works. She never went to rehab or whatever. Maybe she had some, like, regular quarter-ordered outpatient rehab after the vertigo thing. I don't know. But, like, you know, that it seems like her drug habits, like, just kind of stopped. And if you've been doing drugs for, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or something, then, like, you know, you can't just stop. Whatever. Still, it was fun to see Tommy in, like, Protective Big Brother mode, and you could kind of see Oliver, who was watching the whole thing, being, like, you know, kind of grateful that he was stepping in being the big brother. That was really sweet, him stepping in and, you know, looking after Thea. But, oh my gosh, that scene where she was like, "You're not my brother," but when you think about it, he is. And then that made me think of the time that she had a crush on him and tried to kiss him in season 1, and it was weird. Yeah, but oh, what a thrill to see him again. Yeah, so Thea is, at that point, still as I said, a bit of a substance abuse problem. She goes to the party, you know, and sneaks in, and everyone just kind of lets her, because I thought that was weird that, you know, Tommy wasn't more serious about throwing her out. How old would Tommy have been at this point? Like, 20? 21? I don't know. 22? And Thea's like 14, even though she did not look 14 at all. So I was kind of surprised he wasn't a bit more firm about throwing her out. But I guess maybe that had something to do with, like, you know, just the culture of the, you know, the rich kids in that area. You know, they all just kind of did whatever they wanted and let each other do whatever they wanted, because Tommy was... Okay, the thing is, though, Tommy was a real wild child. Like, he and Oliver got into all kinds of stuff and got into all kinds of trouble. And so it just seemed a little false, like, for him, because, like, the way he was looking after Thea seemed more like season 1 Tommy, who's, you know, gotten his butt kicked a little bit and, you know, is being around Floral and trying to be more responsible and, you know, dealing with Oliver and all that. Because, like, I don't know, maybe Oliver's death made him reconsider some things and he tried to start maturing a bit more and look after Thea. But it seemed like, you know, I don't know, maybe back then he wouldn't have cared so much about Thea, but I don't know. So, yeah, then Oliver murdered the drug dealer, of course. You could really see the change, you know, in that scene, like the change, like, from Oliver, who first arrived on the island, to this guy, Oliver, who is really on fast track to becoming the Hood, to Oliver now, who has moved beyond being the Hood. It was really nice. I mean, it was drug dealer getting murdered, that's not nice, but, like, you could kind of see, like, the changes that Oliver's character has come along throughout the seasons and with all the flashbacks and everything. So that was interesting. And then, of course, the whole flashback subplot ended with the party getting ended by the cops who are come to investigate the drug dealer's death. Yeah. Okay. So, was Oliver wearing gloves when he broke the guy's neck? Because, you know, they would have like checked the guy's body and closer fingerprints. And would they have, you know, Oliver, he got in, you know, lots of trouble with the police when he was young because he was such a wild child. What if they, like, ran fingerprints and found Oliver Queen's fingerprints all over this dead guy's body? That would be crazy, and it could happen. I don't know. yeah, so we got to see Laurel decide, again, everyone's favorite plotline of Laurel getting, lectured and infantilized and, told what to do by the men in her life. So after a lecture from her drunk her dad, who's drunk while on the clock as in his job as a police officer, she decides that she doesn't want to move to San Francisco and and get a night and have a nice job there. She decides to stay in Starling City and work at the that pro bono for poor people place in the Glades that she was in season 1. And I just, oh my gosh, it just never ends for Laurel. She can't do anything. Everyone is always telling her what to do. Even back then, like her drunk, alcoholic on the clock dad, has more sway over her than, common sense of get out of this crappy city and get a nice job, that she had in mind. Anyways, so I always had this headcanon that after the shipwreck, whenever Captain Lance saw Thea in public, he would just be really, really awful to her. And when he was just being a jerk in season 1, I was like, I bet he acted like this towards Thea, like whenever he saw her in public. And I was right. He was really awful to Thea, the things he said to her. So I was like, oh, Detective Lance. So, yeah, it was nice to have that headcanon confirmed about him just being awful to Thea. And I was thinking, so did Thea and Detective Lance, they must have known each other. Like, the families had to have known each other because it seems like Thea, Sarah and Laurel and Tommy and Oliver, I think they either knew each other in high school or they knew each other it seems sometimes like they knew each other in high school or from college. So, the families seem to have known each other for a good deal of years. So, it was always something I thought about. So, this girl's just lost her dad and her father, her dad and her brother. And there's this other, older male, authority figure in her life. And I bet he's, being really awful to her. That probably would have really hurt her at the time. Just some, a little something I've thought about before, with the Detective Lance. And tonight that headcanon was confirmed. So I think this video's been a little bit more rambly. It was just a weird episode, really weird episode. Yeah. So that whole subplot ended. They got China White. In the end, Oliver goes back and says he's not going to go help Maseo, but he does. And he goes back, and they get China White, they get the Alpha back, and they decide to go, and for some reason they want to go debrief Oliver in China, which seems weird. Like, wouldn't it be better to, if this is an American operation, wouldn't it be better to debrief him in America? So I think there's something fishy going on there. I think they're going to do something, maybe try to off Oliver to, cover their tracks or whatever. Yeah, so I don't know what to make of this General Shreve. This General Matthew Shreve. He's a character from DC. He's been in some old comics, but there's not much known about him. I did some rudimentary research. There isn't much known about him, so I think they did that so they could play around with the character a bit more. With not having any constraints about canon, but still have a nice DC character in there. So it'll be interesting. Maybe he'll be like the Arrow's General Eiling. Who knows? Yeah, so, I think that's about all that happened this episode. Malcolm's pissed off at Oliver for telling the truth about Thea. Thea's pissed off at Malcolm for, for everything he did to her and Sarah. Detective Lance is pissed off at Laurel, of course, for hiding what he did, for hiding Sarah's death. And some people have pointed out that, Laurel was really awful to impersonate Sarah for a while. But I can kind of understand, Laurel feeling like, he lost her and then found her and then lost her again, and he just had this heart attack, and she's probably, terrified that, it'll just be too much for him to take. So I can understand why she did it, out of fear, because, she's, the really the only person in her life. Like, her mom, you know, she's mended somewhat her relationship with her mother, but, you know, they're not as close as her father. She's not as her and her father. So I can understand why she did it. Some people don't like it, but I can feel like they dragged that plot line out a little bit too long, but I can understand why Laurel did what she did. But as it turns out, Detective Lance isn't mad at her for, like, you know, is really, like, you know, he says, oh, I can get, you know, deal with Sarah's death. I've done it before, but I can't deal with your betrayal. Wow. Oh. Yeah. So Laurel doesn't get a break yet again. I don't know. I mean, I can kind of understand, again, I can understand him being mad about her keeping it from him. But, you know, from, you know, just the lying and, you know, concealing for just months and months about something so huge. But at the same time, you know, I can kind of, you know, you think maybe he'd understand why she did it. Why she did it, you know, after everything he's been through and after all her family's been through, now in despair and the pain. Whew, but when he's like, I don't think that we can ever get over what, you know, this, it was very sad. Yeah, I don't know quite how I feel about it. So, yeah, well, I think that's about all that happened. Not much happened in this episode, really, you know, it being so flashback heavy. Got to see Slade again. Thea's pissed off at Malcolm. Oliver's pissed off. Well, of course he's pissed off at Malcolm, but Malcolm's pissed off at him now. We're going off to Nando Parbat next episode, which will be very exciting. You know, Laurel can't catch a break. Diggle, you know, we got to see Diggle's brother. That was pretty cool. I'm hoping maybe that means that we'll get to see the Deadshot. You see Deadshot. The whole Deadshot plotline come up again. That should be exciting. Yeah. Another great episode. I'll see you next week for Nando Parbat. If you have any comments, concerns, questions, feel free to put them in the comments section. Yeah, so I will see you all next week. Have a good night.